Today, we have at the Zoologist Campfire a Master's of Science in Evolution, Ecology, and Biodiversity, if I say so correctly, and who is about to start his PhD. It is Roel Wouters, a fellow Dutchman, but will be speaking English today. And he, despite being very early in his career, he has already traveled the world, visited 5 continents, doing fieldwork everywhere, chasing venomous animals, from snakes down to mosquitoes, and has just racked up an incredibly impressive first part of his career. And we're very much looking forward to how that continues in your PhD in Prague. Is that right, Roel?
That's definitely right. Although today we'll not talk about mosquitoes. They are exciting, but they're not that exciting compared to all the snake work I did. And you get in way more weird situations when you do snake stuff than when you do work on mosquitoes. So
good.
But I've been incredibly grateful during my studies and also beyond the scope of my studies, but part of my academic life. In a sense, I've been lucky to travel indeed to a lot of different places, from tropical systems to desert systems, also to beautiful European systems.
Is that something you really go for, field work? Is that what drives you?
Well, I always liked it, definitely. I never could have imagined, looking back at the past 8 years of studying here in the Netherlands, that I would be so well traveled. But yeah, from one thing comes the other, and it's how it goes. And when people know that you are a hardworking tropical field biologist, and people tend to ask you for a second or third time. So that's how I ended up in all these fun projects and fun places. And definitely will continue that during my PhD over the next 4 or 5 years. Yeah.
Awesome. So, what was one of your favorite places to visit?
Wow. Definitely one of the nicest places I visited was actually last April in 2023, when I was traveling in Borneo. I was an instructor of the Naturalis Biodiversity Center field course.
Oh yeah, I saw that.
And we went. I actually, after the course ended, I traveled alone for another week, and then I went to Tawau Hills National Park, which is in the south Sabah, which is the Malaysian part of Borneo. It's bordering Kalimantan, the Indonesian part of Borneo, and it's a very non-touristic area. And they have a national park there, which hardly anybody visits. And it's super special to be all on your own, literally all on your own, in the middle of a forest. And it's such a beautiful forest. It's quite a high altitude forest, very wet, a lot of rain, bit hilly, bit mountainous, and the things you see is just incredible. Especially when you're alone, when you're quiet, early in the morning. I remember bathing in the river, and some gibbons were checking me out in the trees.
Oh yeah.
And they were just as curious in what I was doing there than I was curious in what they were doing there. So that's definitely one of the nicest places I visit. And recently I came back from a trip in Montenegro here in Europe, and that also and I was also really impressed by Montenegro, the amount of remote and pristine forest they still have. I never imagined that we still in Europe have this beautiful regions of nature that are also very undiscovered, where hardly any people went. And we did a biodiversity inventory of a specific area that's under threat of development, but it's a very difficult to enter canyon, and hardly ever there's no tourism at all. There's just some locals that go fishing there, but and also it always feels tropical. Actually, it's not tropical, but it has the same challenges as you experience in tropical systems.
Amazing that we still have that in Europe.
Yeah, I was really amazed by it, and I also felt a bit guilty in a sense, from I should have traveled more in Europe instead of going to all these exotic places, because there are beautiful places in Europe. Apparently.
Wow, of course. Yeah. And so was that also where you had some adventures in the field, or what was that?
Yeah, definitely. But I wanted to start with another adventure, which is actually an adventure very close to home, which is actually in the Netherlands. So together with my buddy Jori van Tiel, we have a project on the variation of venom in European adders, and as a
Right.
case study, we take the Dutch populations of European adders because they are extremely isolated, and we are interested in the ecology of the venom. So how does the venom vary between these populations in the Netherlands, between these isolated populations, and are there ecological factors that we can link to that venom? So that's a bit the scope of the project.
Right.
That's that we've been started in 2019. We got a little grant for that, and we've been doing a lot of field work in the Netherlands, which is super interesting because you get to visit these very special, highly protected areas where people can walk through on the main paths, obviously, but you hardly ever have the chance to really go off road and go in more deep into these areas, and they are some of the very vulnerable heathland systems that we have that are very much under threat by nitrogen deposition that we have now in the Netherlands. But it's also home of the European adder.
Yeah.
And that brings me to the first. So the Netherlands, you have to imagine, is a very well organized country, which means you also need like a package of permits when I go in the field. So my backpack always has such a thick pile of permits, and obviously we always go with permits, otherwise we don't do it. And I speak to some fellow colleagues who work on other species, and they never ever have been checked by authorities, but I have been checked already multiple times when I'm in the field.
Really?
Yes,
Huh.
yes. So I'm always the unlucky or lucky guy. Well, I have my permit, so it's not a problem. But we have one very funny situation, which was last year in 2022.
And you go in the summer, I imagine, right? You go when it's warm.
We go in because they hibernate in winter. So the season mostly starts end of February, beginning of March, and then all the way till end of September, beginning of October. And it's a kind of a free time voluntary project. So I go whenever I have time, and I try to schedule once a month a field trip. And then I mostly join local volunteers who are monitoring the situation for the working group Adder Research Netherlands. So I mostly I hardly ever go alone in the fields. I mostly join local volunteers who know the area, who know the adders in the area. Some of these people have been working there for over 35 years. So they have extensive knowledge, and they also know the forest manager, so we can always let them know that we're in the field, and they don't have to be very disturbed by us. However, we were last year in 2022, we were in a heathland system in the area of Staphorst, which is a very small and notorious place, very religious place.
Yes, it's the heart of the Bible Belt.
It's the heart of the Bible Belt, yes.
Yeah.
But they also have a beautiful heathland system with a lot of unique wildlife, including many rare bird species. Last time I was there, which was a few weeks ago, I saw fresh traces of wolves. So it's a very nice wild area, and it's also home to a very nice population of adders. And so I was in that area with René Broek, which is a local volunteer, and we always carry this liquid nitrogen tank with us. It looks a bit like a mushroom-shaped tank, and that's to store the venom. So we can remain the venom intact, so it can be used for functional tests and whatnot. So mostly we just dump the nitrogen tank at the main path because it's too heavy and doesn't make sense to carry it through the heathland. And then we look for adders. We take the venom, and I bring the venom to the tank. Right. We were there on I think it was a Friday or a Saturday, and it was very busy in the area. A lot of people hiking and hiking their dogs, and just a very busy area. And then all of a sudden we were a few hundred meters from the main path in the field, And then all of a sudden we heard a motorcycle crossing through the area, and then you're not allowed to drive a motorcycle in that area. It's really strictly prohibited.
Oh.
But it was the police.
Oh. Okay.
Yes, and he whistled, and well, we got the cue, so we walked to the main path, and we went to him, and it was a very northeastern person, very very strict, not a smile, not a joke.
Okay.
And he got a report from people in the area that there was drugs waste dumped in the forest.
Okay.
Yeah. But the moment he saw us and he saw our shirts with volunteers, he immediately realized that we were not dump waste, and we explained the situation, what we were doing there. Right. He did not even ask for our permits. I don't think he realized that we needed them because it's not his jurisdiction. But he kept being very strict, and he was also a bit emotional because he just came from a deathly crash. So he was really fed up that he had to come all the way into the forest with his motorcycle for this rubbish.
Oh, so they thought the people who walked by thought your liquid nitrogen tank was something like something like or something.
Yes. Yes, they thought it was drug waste, which is very normal in Netherlands, especially in these rural areas.
Yeah, it's a problem.
We are ecstasy producers number one, so there is a lot of drug waste illegally dumped. So I understand the confusion, but it was and René, who really knows the local scientist quite well. Oh, sorry, the local forest managers quite well. He was not very happy that he didn't call the forest manager in the first place before entering the forest to ask we got a report from this and that, and then he also the speed with which he drove through the forest was just absolutely.
Wow.
Anyways, but he left after a quick talk. He wasn't very interested. He just he was just happy that it wasn't a lot of work, and he left again. Yeah, but that's.
What can you do with a motorcycle if there's drugs waste? You cannot take it with you. I mean, that's a bit silly, right?
Nah, I think he was just going to check out the situation, but it was a bit of a weird situation, and yeah, in a way, it was also kind of a funny experience with the authorities here in the Netherlands.
Yeah.
But since then, I have put on a label on the liquid nitrogen tank with scientific research. For any questions, my phone number. So
better.
So that yes, that kind of solved the problem immediately.
Yes, right. You shouldn't leave stuff. Wow.
I
think I know the bottle you're talking about. It's a weird, really big mushroom shaped weird thing. Yes. I could imagine people think this is an alien ship or something from a chemical lab, which it is.
Yeah,
really. I mean,
it's it is. Yeah, and it looks very, very out of place in the forest. I understand.
Yeah. Cool.
But yeah, that was the police on the motorcycle. Yeah, and then in 2019, just very quickly to add my experience with authorities in 2019, I was traveling with Yori in Arizona. We were doing field work for Matt Good's lab in Chiricahua Desert, and we were catching rattlesnakes. And then
where's the desert? Sorry, where?
It's a Chiricahua Desert. It's the south of Arizona. It's close to the Mexican border.
Arizona. Wow.
And it's a very beautiful area. Also, a lot of reptile diversity, a lot of bird diversity. It's just a very interesting area.
And is it one of these deserts with the big cacti, or is it more yuccas, or?
No, it's actually quite a mountainous area. So you have you have desert at the bottom, but then you have a lot of you have a mountain range, and you get deciduous forest up the top. Mixed forest, also pines, but so it's like a nice gradient, and that's also why you have these rock specialists on the top, like rock rattlesnakes and tiger rattlesnakes. And when you go more south, you get your diamondback rattlesnakes and whatnot. So you have a lot of the different species of rattlesnakes there. And we had to collect a few rattlesnakes for an ongoing study, and we were with students students of Matt Good's lab in the field, but Matt wasn't there, and we didn't have a permit on paper. We had the permit with Matt's group, and Matt said, "Just mention my name. They know who I am, and then you will be fine." And of course, we were stopped again. And that's a different joke than the Netherlands. In the Netherlands, you can explain and you can laugh a bit, and you can make a joke. But in the States, I felt really impressed by
It's
this.
intimidating, isn't it?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. And it was dark, and we weren't expecting it. We're in the middle of nowhere, and then all of a sudden you have a car behind your back who starts flashing his alarm. Anyways, yeah. So, but he made a big problem of us not having the permits on paper, and in the end, I will not mention any names, but in the end, we found out. Matt told us that it was a formerly rejected PhD student who became an officer. So he had a bit of personal beef with Matt, and
really?
yes. So it was. So he made us have. He gave us a very hard time. But he did it probably on purpose, because after he did his official thing and he gave us an official warning, no actual money was involved, but just an official warning. Then we had a lovely chat about reptile conservation in the area, and we spoke to him about certain species. So in the end, it was all fine, but he gave us a really hard time, and we were really impressed. And then later when we told Matt, when we came back, he said, "Oh, yeah, I know this guy." So that was my experience with authority, which also kind of shifts me to my next story I wanted to tell. Maybe we can go there.
No, carry on. What part of the world are we going to now?
We're going to Bolivia now, which is maybe the most impressive trip I've made. I went there in 2016. I was 19 years old at that time, so it was really, for me, it was the first time out of Europe, and immediately to a very challenging country as Bolivia. But our main goal was to go and look for anacondas, which were very well studied in that specific area. So we wanted to join with a group to find them, and the people in the area, they are studying them. And you have all three species, or at least three species there in that region. You have the yellow anaconda, you have the green anaconda, and you also have the Bolivian or Beni anaconda in that area.
Oh, I didn't know that third species. That's very interesting.
Yeah, it's been described by that group actually. It's Eunectes beniensis, which is it looks like a green anaconda, or it looks actually a bit like an hybrid between green and yellow anaconda. And there is also some suggestions that it might have been a speciation event from hybridization. But it's very located to the areas around the Beni River, which is where we were. And we found it also, it's a bit different. It has some lighter parts compared to green anaconda. But even if I look at the photos myself after all these years, I find it hard to distinguish. But the people, the experts in the area told us it was a Beni anaconda, so I believe them.
Yeah. All right.
But to get there, it was quite challenging. So we arrived. I was with my friends Freek and Jip, who are both biology students, now both biologists, and we arrived in La Paz, which is the capital city of Bolivia, but it's that's Andes, that's 4.5 kilometers altitude, and we had to go to the lowland forest near the Peruvian border. Well, you could take a plane, but we thought that was boring. Now you can't take a plane anymore because in COVID, the little plane company that flew that went bankrupt. So now there's no plane travel anymore.
Okay.
But you can take a bus, but we also thought that was boring. You could also take a boat, and almost no one does that because it takes 3 days. Through the heart of Maridi National Park, which is a very nice, beautiful, and huge lowland Amazon rainforest. But we did that, and we went with a guide who bring us in 3 days to the destination we had to be. And for us to enter Madrid National Park, you have to normally pay a fee to the Navy. So that's interesting about Bolivia. They don't have sea, but they have a very active Navy, because they still have the hope that once they conquer back or get back the sea, that at least they have a very good Navy. So they have one of the best naval forces in South America, actually. And every little village in Bolivia, every little, even jungle village, have a very active marine base, and a lot of young people join in the Navy. So we had to pay a fee to the Navy for entering the national park.
Yeah,
and that was in a way very funny, because since we were not really tourists, because we were there with purpose. So our guide was like, no, I'm going to put you in the books as volunteers. Then you don't have to pay a fee, because you're doing important work here, and then we can go on. But the Navy, they didn't believe the story. They thought we were tourists and we were just going to have fun in the area. And I don't blame them, because we in a sense we were Westerners that were visiting an area. So of course, I mean, it's a couple of bucks, we wouldn't have mind. But then he came up with a solution. We could pay 1/3 of the price, and he would put us in the books as volunteers. Yes.
Right.
So we bribed the Bolivian Navy.
Okay. Don't let them hear you say that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's what it is. It's what happens in these kind of situations, especially so remote. But we did not expect, and that's actually where I'm going. It's might be the most impressive and sad story that I have encountered during field work, is that we would actually need the Navy just 2 days later. We were going upstream the river, and downstream the river. And after a day or two, we saw a lot of black-headed vultures on the middle of the river, and an incredibly awful smell. And our boat driver said could be an animal that's deceased and floating on the river, but be prepared. It wouldn't be the first time if we found a human body in the river. And upon arrival, we saw indeed it was a girl that drowned. And it drowned from the village. Drowned from the village a day ahead of us. And they knew, because they had seen the signs that she was missing.
Right.
But she she was at least like 5 or 6 days deceased, because she was already floating. And that was a really awful look.
Yes.
And that's something you don't expect when you're in such a romantic place, looking for wildlife, seeing the parrots fly over, and then all of a sudden you find a dead girl, very young still. But it also makes you realize that you're a part of a very tough system. And in those regions, especially Bolivia, is a very poor country, and a lot of these people are dependent on the river for fishing, for washing. And the children wash in the river, they play in the river, but they can't swim, because they never learn to swim. So the current takes them, and sometimes they drown. And
wow. Yeah, that's very sad. So
in this case,
to
it happened.
Call the Navy at that point to warn them.
So there was a satellite phone on board, and they called the Navy, and to collect her body. So because we couldn't take her. It was just we had another night and day to go, and it was so extremely smelly, and we were with a very small boat, and a very slow boat, like a canoe with a motor, and so we we called the Navy, and the Navy went to collect her with a motorboat, and they brought her back to the village she came from.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, that's another side of the. It's not a fun story, but it's a story that made a lot of impression.
Yeah, I can imagine. And did you eventually also go to the village where she came from?
Yes, we went to the village. Yes. We obviously we didn't have any contact with her family or whatnot, because it's but
Sure.
we saw indeed the especially the poorest part of the village that lived on the river. So you could imagine how the situation happened, and that was quite sad. So
Wow. For your first
that's-
trip to outside of Europe, that is quite impressive.
Yes, but it also, and that's also kind of beauty of it. It makes you realize that you are. We often think as people that we own we own nature, we own the world, but then when you are in these systems, you realize that no, it's not true. You are just part of a system, and you can be taken by it in a minute without you realizing it. So, but I think that's also the beauty in a way. Like we still have these remote parts in the world, and it's incredibly important, I think. And but that was a tough one to swallow, and that made a lot. It stick with me for a few days, and then obviously we found the anacondas, and we found a lot of other wildlife, so it kind of tweaks your attention a bit. But I have been looking back and thinking back about it for many years, even now again. I thought preparing this podcast, I thought this is a story that actually I should tell, because it made such an impression, and it's something you don't expect, but something that can happen. And it's weird that in that system, I don't know if I would react if I would find somebody deceased in the streets of my town here. That would maybe make a very different impression on me than when you find somebody in a system where life and death are such a normal part of the natural dynamics.
And it's also makes you kind of feel exposed to the dangers of nature, right? I mean, to see
exactly,
you can actually take a life like that. And you're enjoying it, and you're almost a tourist. Wow. Yeah, I can see, and especially if you were 19 at the time.
Yes.
Wow.
We were very inexperienced. Also, I was the worst prepared for a trip ever. That trip with broken boots and whatnot. And anyways, but we learned from that.
And you found the anacondas in the end.
We found.
How was that? Was that at least a high to balance the low?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. We were also lucky enough to see a jaguarundi and an ocelot, so two felines, which is quite rare to see.
Yeah.
And a giant anteater and a lot of other wildlife. So kind of definitely weighed out. But no, the anacondas was very, very cool. It was in a wetland area, very wet, literally very wet area. It's kind of an area that's linked to the Pantanal region in Brazil, so it borders that corner with Peru, Brazil, and it's also an area that's in the rainy season is completely wet, and now it was in the dry season, so it was more like a swamp. You could walk through it, but you were at some points you were still here in the water, so it's not very convenient.
Wow.
It's quite difficult also spotting them because they are you only see a face on the surface.
But you're never worried. I mean, I imagine people listening to this who think, okay, you're 19, your first time outside of Europe, you're up to your neck in the water where there are anacondas. I mean, I can imagine some people freaking out just at the idea of that, right? So, it didn't worry you at all?
No. That was that's the part of who I was, who I wanted to be, and who I became, I guess. So. No, I was, and especially because you're surrounded by people who have done this a million times, and so it's not
Right.
I'm not there on my own, and we were there with a decent group of people who had a lot of experience. So I felt very comfortable with their expertise, and that's actually how it always goes. Still, now when you go to areas, you always work together with local scientists, local experts,
Yeah.
because then
Yeah.
that makes sense. They know the area, they know the dangers,
So
and
despite you
yeah,
being reminded of the fragility of life, you were not worried about your own. I'm just curious. You go everywhere, and I'm sure for your PhD you will go chasing geckos all around the world again. Um, is there a particular animal or particular place you still want to see that's really high on your list? What's the top of your list of things to see?
yeah, everywhere I guess. But no, that's but I no I have been I haven't been to Central Africa, and I really
Really?
uh um so for me one special. So I was in Borneo last year and also a few years ago, and I saw wild orangutans, and for me that's actually, and I had to cry when I saw them. So for me that was a really
Hey.
special moment, because we share 96% of our DNA with these primates. Um, uh, we uh, we 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 we've cut down 40% Borneo for palm oil plantations,
Yeah, it's
and
horrible.
and
I've
from
been there too. It's staggering
yeah
to see what it turned into.
yeah
Yeah.
and and we were actually on a field center with the students from Leiden University here, which particularly studied the impact of palm oil plantations on wildlife. So we were very close to monoculture, kilometers of monoculture of palm oil, and we were
Uh-huh.
in one of the last pieces of secondary forest, so it's highly disturbed forest. All the big dipterocarp trees had been cut out, and it was really surrounded all around by palm oil plantations. So we were in a
Man.
last resort for wildlife. So very high density of big mammals, a lot of birds, a lot of reptiles, a lot of everything actually, but also a lot of orangutans, higher density than actually is natural.
Uh,
So you get all these weird behaviors and a lot of fights between orangutans, which normally wouldn't
Oh,
occur.
yeah.
But well, yeah, we were lucky enough to see them, um, and for me, it's a very special moment when you look into the eyes of an animal that you share 90% of your DNA with, and realizing that you're also causing the end of the world for them, and for them a
Very.
lot sooner than for us, I guess. And I would be really it would be really special to once encounter the other apes, the African apes that are even closer to us, the gorillas, the
Yeah.
chimpanzees, the bonobos. And I don't know,
Yeah.
I have decided not to travel anymore without a purpose. So if I can do field work in the area and we encounter them, so be it. I'm not planning on visiting them as a tourist, because I think, yeah, I travel enough and it's not
Yeah.
worth it to make useless trips. But it would be very special if I could have a chance before they perish to see the great apes. Yeah.
That would be. Yeah. I think people don't understand how small these remnants of forests are. If you go, I also went through Borneo. You're 5 hours on the boat, just passing industry and palm plantations after palm plantation, and then you come to this tiny, 5 by 5 kilometer bit of forest. That's it. That's what that's all there is, and it's just shocking, really. You think of
Yeah.
Borneo as the island, jungle filled island, but it's not anymore. And
No, no,
yeah,
I no, I actually see a lot of similarities between our Dutch agriculture and the Bornean system, because
really,
it's just monocultures with ditches, and yeah, it looks tropical because palm oil trees are 4, 5, 6 meters high, and they feel tropical. They are tropical, but it's not that different from a grass meadow in the Netherlands.
yeah,
That that separates nature and creates isolated patches of nature with isolated populations and all the problems that come with it. So yeah, for
yeah,
me it was quite shocking. Also realizing that actually most of that palm oil produced in Borneo is coming to the Rotterdam harbor for processing. So we are also in that way related to Borneo.
Yeah, are
So it's
complicit in the
yeah,
deforestation, I guess, as Dutch people.
yeah, but it's a very difficult situation, of course, because we also need to feed a lot of people. Palm oil is highly efficient, so yeah. Well, I hope as we are looking in the Netherlands to biodiversity inclusive farming, I hope that's something that would be also be the future for Borneo as well, to
Right.
create biodiversity ecological friendly farming, to see if we can at least maintain and manage what we have in a way. But yeah, it's not always it's mostly romantic being in the fields.
Yes.
You visit these beautiful and amazing places, but in some cases you also work also with the mosquitoes. You work in very dirty areas, on trash bins,
Ugh.
in rural areas, in urban areas. So it is romantic, but very often it's also very confronting in a way. What a mess are we making of the world?
Well, and
Yeah.
that's why we want to hear from people from the field like you to hear what it's like to actually be a biologist and go to all these places and have some adventures and have some ups and downs. Thanks a lot, Roel, for coming and telling your stories. And I think we'll have more stories from you in the future, by the sound of it.
Well, that's I'm looking forward to the next time. My next trip will be Panama for my PhD field
Oh,
work. Yeah, we're chasing lizards in very remote areas. So next stories are already on the plan.
fantastic. Well, thank you very much for coming on, and good luck with the
Thank you
PhD.
for the invitation.
Bye bye.